Alright, so you may have seen this video like an hour ago, but I misworded something about the Lakers that made it sound like I believed the Lakers could beat the Warriors in a series. I do not believe that. Anyway, let's talk about the Warriors and Klay and stuff. He's going to be coming back, I think, within like a week or two at this point. I think the speculation was January 9th, I believe. He's got about half a season to get back to being peak Klay in time for the playoffs. You think about the rotation, Steve Kerr's already said that he's going to be starting. You assume Jordan Poole's going to the bench. This is assuming the Warriors are not beat up with health and safety at some point this season, of course. But Jordan Poole as a sixth man, to me, it makes sense. Think about the Draymond at center lineups. A lot of options there. Obviously, Steph, Klay, Draymond. After that, there's a lot of candidates between Jordan Poole, Wiggins, Otto Porter, Bjelica, Iguodala, Gary Payton II, Damian Lee, possibly Kuminga, and any combination of all those dudes I just named. Of course, Looney is still going to be playing, and Wiseman fits into all of this in some way. We'll have to see when he's back. But specifically for Klay, offensively, of course, he's going to be able to shoot. We know this. It'll be something to see with his movement off ball. I mean, he's not Steph, but he's about as close to Steph as you're going to get. And also defensively with Klay, are we going to see him defending like Chris Paul or Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell? Now, that said, the Warriors, of course, they switch a lot. They also play a lot of zone, so it's not as if Klay is going to be on one guy 100% of the game, but you get what I'm saying. Big possessions in the fourth quarter, that whole spiel. To think about them versus Phoenix or the Jazz, to be honest, I think about Ayton and Gobert the most in those series offensively. I mean, as far as attacking Golden State in the post, I don't really know if that's going to do it. Their inside defense is amazing. The rotations, the zone defense, they give up the least amount of shots per game in the restricted area. I'm not making this up. You can just look this up on NBA.com. When they're diving to the rim, when they are perhaps sealing their guy very early in a half-court possession, if you get it to them in those moments, and I think the best candidates to notice that sort of thing are, of course, Chris Paul and Mike Conley for the two teams, I think there is room for you to get some extra easy buckets against the Warriors. The other thing, too, is, with the Jazz or the Suns, both teams who play a lot of pick-and-roll style stuff, if the Warriors are switching and they turn it into more of a one-on-one game, how are they going to deal with it then? I mean, there's obviously slipping screens and there's the big screening their own guy as opposed to the guy defending the ball handler. And the idea there is the ball handler like Chris Paul or Donovan Mitchell, whatever, they can then go around that action. The thing with the Suns or the Jazz, though, is even if it does become more of a simple game where the Warriors are switching a lot and you can't get as much of your normal stuff, actions off ball or whatever, Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell might still be able to bail you out of a couple playoff games just from making tough shots. And of course, no matter what defense the Warriors choose to go with, whether it's a zone or a switching one or a trapping one, Chris Paul and Mike Conley, they're always going to make the right decision with the ball. And Gobert and Ayton are two of the best rollers in the league, so the Warriors are going to have their challenges. But the one thing with Golden State is that they can switch it up in the middle of a game better than I think most teams can, where they could be like, oh, you know what? The Jazz are killing us when we're trapping. The swing offense is beating our rotations. Well, okay, let's start switching, or let's go into the zone, or whatever. Or it could be as simple as just changing who guards who. I mean, I remember this, for whatever reason, this really left an impression on me. It was the first time they played the Suns this year. They opened up the game with Draymond defending Chris Paul. Sure, they went away from it by the second half, I believe, but it's like they're just willing to do something like that. They just throw something at you that you perhaps didn't expect right away, and it's on you to react to it. Utah is loaded with shooting, and we'll see if they add some more perimeter defense by the trade deadline. You've got the Suns where Mikal Bridges is cutting to the rim. As far as how these teams can guard Golden State, I mean, the Suns and the Jazz are both great defensive teams. But I also think those small Warriors lineups, with Draymond at center and just Steph and Klay flying around and just the two-man action you can run with Draymond, and not just those two, but pretty much anybody. So it's like, well, okay, maybe you want to keep Gobert away from the Steph-Draymond stuff, and you would rather have Gobert basically ignore someone so he can stand in front of the rim. Well, the problem there is the Warriors have so many guys they can go to who can shoot in those Draymond at center lineups between Poole, Wiggins, Porter, Bjelica. I mean, it would maybe work against Iguodala. Even then, we've seen Iguodala make some big shots sometimes in the playoffs, so it's tough. As a result, maybe you're like, all right, we'll have Gobert defend Draymond. Well, now when Steph and Draymond are involved in the action, Gobert has to step up, and then he's pulled out of the paint. I think all of this applies to Ayton, if I didn't already say that. Of course, I still don't want to imply that it would be easy. You think about the off-ball screening for Steph and Klay. If you're allowed to be a little more physical in the playoffs, that can help you with dealing with some of those actions. It's still very difficult, but it can help a little. Also, DeAndre Ayton has gotten better at stepping up and not just standing in front of the rim. Also, Gobert's been a bit underrated with his defense outside of the paint the past couple of years. I know there's a lot of Gobert takes on the internet, but the guy's not stuck in cement. He is able to close out on guys and all that. But, I mean, even with the most mobile big guy in the league, it's a challenge to cover all the space that you need to cover against the Warriors. Do we trust any of the Nets centers to guard the Warriors? I mean, the one would be Nick Claxton, but then the Warriors would probably expose his lack of offense by trapping ball handlers or whatever and daring him to make a play in the open floor. Of course, KD, Harden, and potentially Kyrie are so good that maybe nothing else would matter and it would just be a shot-making contest pretty much. The other thing with the Nets, too, is that KD has been a damn good passer for, 6 or 7 years now, it feels like at this point. Harden's a great passer. Kyrie is a good one. Blake can also make plays out of the short roll. And given how much shooting they have, especially when all three dudes are playing, again, who knows with Kyrie, just how do you deal with all that shooting and all that star power? And the thing, too, is the Nets have been good defensively this season. A lot of that is them defending the three-point line well. And I feel like the Warriors would be the biggest test of that. You think about the Bucks, I mean, Giannis at center is very interesting when thinking about that versus a Warriors small lineup. Giannis is on the very short list of guys who I think could dominate the Warriors inside. However, the Warriors are also on the very short list of teams that I think could slow down Giannis from just doing whatever he wants at the basket, so that would be pretty wild to see. Some of that would be just the matchup of him and Draymond, but also I keep coming back to the zone defense that the Warriors are experimenting with more, and combined with their size, could present some challenges for Giannis, but we saw in the playoffs when Giannis embraced setting a few more screens, I think it just opened up so many things and it added an extra layer to their offense, and it would just be really cool to see, but it's not a guarantee we're going to get Warriors Bucks. So yeah, to sum this whole thing up, you give the Warriors like at least an 80% Klay Thompson, yeah, it's still going to be a challenge in the playoffs, but it's fair to believe that it's them and everybody else.